Basten Korrin didn't know what he expected when he stepped off the shuttle onto Galric's station. But it certainly wasn't being handed a task sheet with the words Beast Taming Trial Level 3 Specimen printed in 5 languages across the top. The station was a sprawling lattice of metal and glass orbiting a dying star, its corridors filled with the constant hum of alien voices and the scent of ozone and disinfectant. Basten crumpled the task sheet slightly in his fist and stared at the creature in the reinforced enclosure before him. It had 6 legs, 2 tails, and eyes that didn't blink. Its skin was the color of storm clouds, rippling with tension as it paced from side to side. A panel labeled the species as Threxalon juvenile. "Juvenile, you're Basten Korrin," a voice asked behind him. He turned to see a tall Kavari, translucent blue skin shimmering under the station lights. The alien's long fingers held a data slate. "Yeah, that's me. I am Mentor Vel. You've been assigned the Threxalon taming task, yes. I didn't exactly ask for it, if that's what you mean." Vel's gaze didn't change. "No one asks. It's a rite of integration. Most species complete it with traditional methods. You are human, yes, last I checked." "Then good luck," Vel said. "It's never been done by your kind." "Wait, never, correct. The last human who attempted taming a Threxalon was admitted to the medbay with a torn femur and several internal ruptures." Basten looked back at the creature. It stopped pacing and stared directly at him. "Perfect," he muttered. Vel made a note on the slate. "You have 60 standard days. The goal is behavioral control via non-invasive methods. Demonstrate at least 3 trained responses. No sedation, no implants. If it attacks, you may signal the emergency barrier. If you die, we will notify your species liaison." Comforting. Vel turned and walked away. The enclosure's door hissed open. Basten looked at the creature again. It hadn't moved. He stepped inside cautiously, the door sliding shut behind him. The Threxalon lowered its head slightly, nostrils flaring. Basten didn't make any sudden movements. He slid his backpack slowly off his shoulders and placed it on the ground. "All right," he said. "Guess we're stuck together." The creature tilted its head. Over the next 10 days, Basten tried every documented method of taming from the station's database clickers, scent-based reinforcement, light pulses, even a modified musical sequence. The Threxalon ignored everything. It didn't attack him, but it didn't obey either. It watched him, followed him, and once even licked the side of his tent when he was sleeping. By day 11, Basten gave up on the guidebooks. He sat outside the enclosure, tossing a rubber ball against the wall while the creature sat inside, watching through the transparent panel. "You're not dumb," he said. "You just don't care about the same things. You probably don't even know what a reward is." The Threxalon tapped its claws against the floor in a rhythmic pattern. "I'm starting to think you just want me to keep showing up." That night, Basten brought a metal bowl of heated protein cubes and slid it into the enclosure. The Threxalon sniffed them, then pushed the bowl back toward the door and sat down. Basten frowned. "You don't like station food either." He slid in a different bowl, this one with a mix of local vegetation and freeze-dried meat. The creature devoured it instantly. "Ah," he said, "so you're picky." Over the next week, he began building a rapport, no commands, no punishments. Just observation and reaction. The Threxalon, he started calling it, Rilu, began responding to his presence with low growls that, over time, softened into throaty, purring sounds. Basten learned that Rilu liked being scratched behind what passed for ears. He also learned that loud noises made it retreat for hours, and that it hated the color yellow. On day 24, something unexpected happened. As Basten was repairing a loose panel near the enclosure's corner, a coolant pipe burst and sprayed supercooled vapor across his leg. He dropped to the ground, screaming. Rilu leapt forward, slamming its body into the interior wall repeatedly until the emergency barrier activated and sealed off the room. Station medics arrived minutes later and pulled him out. The damage was severe. Second-degree burns across his thigh and calf. He couldn't walk for 2 weeks. During recovery, he insisted that he be wheeled back to the enclosure every day. The medics argued. Vel disapproved, but Basten refused to end the trial, so every day he sat in a chair outside the barrier, talking to Rilu. The creature would sit on the other side, mirroring his posture. Once he could stand again, he returned to the enclosure, limping but determined. Rilu approached him gently, nose touching his bandaged leg with what Basten interpreted as caution. "Yeah, it hurts," he said. "But I'm all right." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a strip of dried meat. Rilu took it delicately from his hand. "Let's try something new today." He stood, wincing, and raised his hand. "Sit." Rilu blinked, then slowly lowered itself into a seated position. Basten's heart skipped. "You did it," he tried again. "Lie down." No response. "Okay, one thing at a time." For the next 10 days, he worked on consistency. Sit became reliable, then came stay. Then roll. Rilu responded better to gestures than words, so Basten combined both. By day 45, he had 3 commands down. Vel arrived unannounced, watching from the observation deck as Basten guided Rilu through a series of responses. Sit. Rilu sat. Stay. Rilu remained still while Basten limped to the other side of the enclosure. Come. The creature trotted to him and nuzzled his arm. Vel descended from the deck and approached the enclosure. Impressive. I did not believe it possible. Neither did I, Basten admitted, but I think it just wanted to be understood. It has never responded this way before. Not even to our best handlers. I didn't try to control it, Basten said. I just treated it like I'd treat anyone else. Vel studied him. You are still limping. Yeah, burn damage takes time, Vel nodded. You have completed the task, but you have 15 days remaining. Do you wish to continue? Basten looked at Rilu. Yes. The next 2 weeks were filled with unexpected developments. Rilu began initiating interactions. It brought him object scraps of fabric, discarded tools. It mimicked his posture, his pacing. When he tripped during a drill and fell hard on his injured leg, it stood watch until medical staff arrived. Basten underwent another scan. No new damage, just strained tissue. He was told to rest. He didn't. He returned the next day, slower but still present. On day 60, as the trial ended, a small crowd gathered outside the enclosure. Vel stood at the front. Several other species observed silently. Basten stood inside the enclosure with Rilu. Let's show them, he said. He ran through all 3 commands, then added a new one spin. Rilu turned in a slow circle. The crowd murmured. Vel stepped forward. The trial is complete. You have succeeded. Basten looked at Rilu. What happens to it now? It will be transferred to a behavioral research program, Vel said. Unless you wish to remain its handler. You would be responsible for its training and well-being. Basten didn't hesitate. Yes, Vel extended a hand. Then welcome. You are the first human to bond with a Threxalon. Rilu nudged Basten's hand gently, then settled beside him. He grinned. Guess we're a team now. The first time Rilu dragged the entire environmental control panel out of the wall, Basten had just sat down to eat. He blinked at the sparking mess on the other end of the enclosure while chewing a mouthful of lukewarm nutrient curry. Rilu stood beside the wreckage, tail twitching, looking oddly pleased with itself. That was bolted in, Basten said after swallowing, and welded. Rilu gave a low, satisfied rumble and nudged a piece of smoking conduit toward him like a trophy. The maintenance drone outside the enclosure let out a warning beep and zipped away, presumably to file a formal complaint. Basten sighed and set his tray down. He limped over to the damage, crouched slowly, and examined the torn-out panel. The coolant hoses were intact somehow. But the airflow regulator had been sheared in half. Rilu hovered nearby, expectant. This better not be your way of asking for a breeze, Basten muttered. You're smart enough to tap the interface. The creature blinked slowly, then wandered off and began pawing curiously at the gravity stabilizer housing. Don't know, no, if you break that, we both get to float into the ceiling and suffocate. Rilu paused. It seemed to consider this, then settled back onto its haunches. Basten tapped his calm. Yeah, it's me. I need a replacement air reg and a new panel for enclosure 7. No, not sabotage, curiosity. Yeah, again. He ended the call and sat back against the wall, rubbing his scarred leg. The healing process had plateaued. Every morning he stretched, walked, endured the dull ache, and then pretended it didn't exist. The medical team had offered a nerve damping patch, but it made him groggy and he couldn't afford foggy judgment around Rilu. The creature returned and curled beside him, close enough for its body heat to seep through his uniform. He rested his elbow against its shoulder. "You've got a weird sense of play," he said. "Wonder what you do with a toolbox." Rilu flicked its ear membrane and gave a soft, amused grunt. 2 days later, he found out. He'd left his toolkit on the bench while resealing the coolant pipe Rilu had nosed loose the night before. When he turned around, 3 of his wrenches were arranged in a triangle on the floor, and Rilu was using a clamp to tap the center of it rhythmically. "That's geometry," Basten muttered. "You're doing geometry." The tapping stopped. Rilu looked up at him, then at the triangle, then resumed tapping. Later that day, he submitted a request for enhanced cognitive assessment protocols. Vel denied it, citing limited resources. "Then let me build my own tests," Basten said when they crossed paths in the corridor outside the mess hall. "You are not a cognitive specialist. I'm not a xenobiologist either, but here we are." Vel's translucent face remained unreadable. "Do not endanger yourself." "Or the specimen." "Wasn't planning to, but I think we've underestimated just how much it's picking up. Beasts are not uncommon in the galaxy. Some exhibit mimicry, some display tool interaction. Sure, but Rilu's doing math and design. It's not just copying me." "It's experimenting." Vel's head tilted slightly. "Perhaps you are projecting." "Then let me prove I'm not." There was a pause. "Proceed, but document everything." Back in the enclosure, Basten set up a blank display slab and placed several colored discs beside it. Rilu watched from a crouched position, tail wrapped around its hind legs. He slid a red disc onto the slab. "Red." Rilu sniffed it. He added a blue one. Blue, then a green. "Green." Rilu rested its chin on the floor. He removed all 3, shuffled them behind his back, and placed the red one again. "Which one?" Rilu flicked out a claw and tapped the red disc. They ran through the sequence 5 times, each time with different orders and combinations. Rilu got everyone right. The next day, Basten added symbols. He drew a triangle, a square, and a spiral on the slab. Then he held up a carved shape he'd made from packing foam, a triangle, and asked, "Match." Rilu placed its paw over the drawn triangle. By the end of the week, it was combining symbols to request things. A triangle next to a red disc meant it wanted the red disc placed into a triangular slot on the wall, which it had scratched out itself. One afternoon, while adjusting a thermal relay that had begun to buzz ominously, Basten heard Rilu growl in a pitch he hadn't heard before, low and urgent. He turned. The creature stood at the far edge of the enclosure, fur bristled, tail stiff. "What is it?" Rilu pointed its snout toward the ceiling. Something thudded above them. The station's lights flickered. Basten's comm chirped with a broadcast override. "Unscheduled dock breach detected in Ring 8. All personnel maintain current positions until containment is verified." He looked up. Ring 8 was only 2 decks above them. Rilu paced, claws clicking on the floor. Basten tapped the comm. "Control, this is Handler Korrin. I've got a Threxalon reacting to something. If there's a breach, I need permission to open the enclosure and move to secure quarters." Static, then silence. "Of course," he muttered. "Comms always go quiet during emergencies." Another thump, this one louder. The overhead vent grill screeched. Something was crawling through the ducts. Rilu lowered its body, eyes narrowing. It gave a short bark. Basten moved quickly, triggering the manual override on the enclosure's door. The station protocols didn't allow opening it during alerts, but he'd rerouted the power last week when the emergency lights had glitched. The door hissed open. Rilu rushed forward, placing itself between Basten and the nearest vent. "I don't know what's up there," Basten muttered, grabbing a pry bar from his bench. "But if it comes through that ceiling, I'm going to be very annoyed." A panel burst inward. A serpentine organism dropped through, smooth-skinned, eyeless, and at least 3 meters long, with a mouth like a surgical clamp. Basten didn't have time to shout. Rilu tackled it mid-lunge, slamming the creature into the opposite wall hard enough to dent the paneling. It twisted, hissing, but Rilu's claws pinned it. With a growl that rattled Basten's ribs, Rilu tore the thing in half. Black fluid sprayed the wall. Basten stood frozen, breathing hard, pry bar still raised uselessly. Rilu turned and padded back to him, blood dripping from its jaw. He dropped the bar. You good? Rilu licked its shoulder and sat down, the comm crackled. All personnel, breach neutralized, repeat containment restored, biological intruder eliminated in Ring 7, report any anomalies. Basten stared at the mangled corpse. I think this qualifies. The cleanup crew took hours to arrive. When they entered the room in full hazard gear, one of them paused beside the body and turned to Basten. This was a Zilran crawler. They don't usually come this far into inhabited space. Maybe it was lost, Basten said. Or maybe it was following something. The tech glanced at Rilu, who was curled against the wall, dozing after they left. Basten sat beside the creature and leaned back. You saved my life. Rilu opened one eye, then closed it again. You're not just intelligent, he said quietly. You're protective. You made a choice. His leg ached more than usual. He adjusted his position, grimacing. I'm going to request a diagnostic scan for you, he said. Not because I think there's something wrong, but because I think there's something very, very right. Rilu snorted softly. And for the record, Basten added, if anyone tries to call you a beast again, I'm going to make them meet your triangular wrench sculpture. Basten stood still, arms crossed, as the containment door sealed behind him with a final hiss. The room was smaller than Rilu's enclosure, a debriefing chamber with a single chair bolted to the floor and a viewing screen embedded in the wall. Sterile, undecorated, and faintly echoing. Across from him, Vel adjusted the position of a portable scanner with a slow, deliberate motion. The device emitted a short pulse and began humming. You were supposed to report to medical for your leg 20 days ago, Vel said. I was busy, Basten replied. Rilu's been progressing fast. I didn't want to lose momentum. You limped through 3 security checkpoints, Vel said without looking up. That implies more than a mild setback. I've had worse, Basten said. Besides, I didn't ask you to call this meeting. I didn't, Vel replied. Station director nor did. The screen on the wall flickered to life. A pale-skinned Braskian appeared, her scaled crest twitching in irritation. If I may, Director Noor said, I'd like to know why there is a non-certified human conducting unsanctioned cognitive experiments on one of our most volatile contained species. You gave me the trial, Basten said, not moving. I completed it. Then I stayed on as handler. There was no clause about not learning what it's capable of. There was a clause about containment discipline, Noor said sharply. And I have a report from Section 12 indicating your Threxalon not only left its enclosure, but engaged a hostile bioform in direct combat. I didn't let it out, Basten said. It broke protocol to protect me, and it succeeded. You're welcome. Noor paused, her crest flushed dark green. Whether or not it saved your life is irrelevant. You violated the no-open rule during an alert. I rerouted power before the alert was issued, Basten said. Technically, the door was already unlocked when the breach occurred. Vel stared at him. You rewired the enclosure's failsafe? I like having options. Noor's eyes narrowed to slits. You've created a liability. No, Basten said. I've created a relationship. Rilu's responding to social cues, not control methods. That's more valuable than anything you were going to get from plasma pen charts and compliance drills. The screen fell silent. Vel finally spoke again. We reviewed your recordings. The shape recognition, the color sorting, the symbol matching. That wasn't mimicry. That was comprehension. Then you believe me. I believe something new is happening. I don't yet know if it's safe. Basten leaned on the back of the chair. You've got dozens of species on this station, and not one of them does better under fear than trust. Why assume the exception? Noor's crest twitched again. You've made your case, but the station council has voted to transfer the Threxalon to a remote cognitive facility for long-term observation. Basten blinked. Transfer? It will be sedated and transported off station within 40 standard hours. You are not authorized to accompany it. You're taking it away from the only handler it's ever trusted. That is precisely the issue, Noor said. It has bonded. That makes it unpredictable. Basten stepped back from the chair. You're not transferring a test subject. You're breaking up a friendship. Vel's gaze didn't shift. The council is unanimous. The screen went dark. Basten left the debriefing chamber without another word. He didn't go back to the crew quarters or the mess. He went straight to Rilu. The enclosure lights were dimmed for rest cycle, but Rilu was awake, sitting near the observation glass. It lifted its head as Basten approached. He entered, sat on the floor without speaking, and pulled a small data crystal from his pocket. He slotted it into the portable slab, and the last month's training footage played in silence. Rilu learning, adapting, protecting. "I don't know if you understand what 40 hours means," Basten said quietly, "but that's all we've got." Rilu flicked an ear. "They're taking you to some research outpost. No visitors, no handler, just white walls and observation drones." Rilu rose and walked over, nudging his shoulder. "There's nothing I can do," Basten said. "I've seen the order. They'll sedate you before transport, and if you resist, they'll neutralize." Rilu tilted its head. Then, slowly, it turned and padded to the corner of the enclosure. It began scratching into the floor panel with one claw. Basten watched. The lines formed a triangle, then a spiral, then a short dotted line between them. He stared. "That's a path." Rilu looked back at him and touched the spiral with its snout. "You want me to take you there?" It tapped the triangle. "No, not there." "You're saying we've already been there." Rilu drew a second triangle, smaller, beside the first. Basten stood. "Wait, you're not showing me a destination, you're showing me options." Rilu gave a low chuff. He looked around the enclosure, then at the ceiling panels. "If I had an hour and the right tools." Rilu moved to the wall and placed its front paws against a seam in the corner panel. Its claws slid into the gaps. With a sharp pull, it pried the panel loose behind it. A service tunnel stretched into darkness. "You've known that was there this whole time." Rilu tapped the edge of the tunnel. Basten exhaled. "You planned this." 2 hours later, the lights in Sector 4 briefly flickered. No one noticed the minor drop in pressure in Auxiliary Shaft 9. The maintenance crew logged a non-urgent alert and resumed their shift. By the time the security team checked the enclosure, it was empty. Basten and Rilu moved through the maintenance duct in silence. The human's leg throbbed, but he pushed through, using the low walls for leverage. Rilu moved ahead, guiding. Every now and then, the creature paused and waited for him to catch up. They emerged in a disused docking gantry near the station's outer ring. The bay was scheduled for decommissioning. The only ship inside was an old courier vessel, its hull patched with thermoplastic and its ID plate half erased. Basten limped toward it. "This thing flies." Rilu grunted and nosed the access panel. The hatch slid open with a wheeze of released pressure. Inside, the cockpit was dusty but functional. Basten slid into the pilot's seat and wiped the console clean. "You've been watching me fly in the sims, haven't you?" Rilu settled behind him, wrapping its tail around the base of the seat. The control panel lit up. Basten keyed in a launch override. The system asked for clearance. He bypassed it. A minute later, the bay doors began to open with a slow mechanical groan. "Where do we go?" he asked. Rilu pulled a broken stylus from a pouch in the wall and tapped the nav screen. 4 dots lit up. One blinked. Basten smiled. "You picked a destination." The ship rose smoothly off the deck and slipped through the bay doors into the black. Behind them, the station shrank. No alarms sounded. No interceptors launched. Either the system hadn't noticed or someone had buried the alert. Basten leaned back in the chair. "You're not a beast." Rilu rested its head on his shoulder. Outside, the stars turned slowly. The ship coasted toward a point neither charted nor named, but known to one creature that had, against every assumption, chosen trust over instinct. And that, Basten thought, was more than enough.